Today is June 6th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It's a thrill, honor, and joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today at the Big Book, we're going to be reading Chapter 8, Two Wives, pages 108 to 110. And actually not reading out the personal stories today. I read a little bit ahead yesterday in our reading, so I got a little overzealous once again. I gotta work on that. But we are going to be reading out of the 12 and 12, tradition number 7, page 163 today. Hey, we've been given a brand new set of 24 hours, and it's up to us today who we decide to be. And hey, at the very least, if we're sober by the end of today, that's a good day. So let's go ahead and get to the good stuff. So if you recall from yesterday's reading in Two Wives, really some heartbreaking stuff. Again, talking about how we've tried to hold the love of our children for their father. We have told small tots that father was sick, which was much nearer to the truth than we realized. They struck the children, kicked out door panels, smashed treasured crockery, ripped the keys out of pianos. I mean, you get the gist. Absolute destruction alcoholism can cause. Again, this chapter was written for wives, by wives of alcoholics. And this was written, remember, back in the 30s. Thank God now that we have support groups for those who are related or married to alcoholics. Thank God for Al-Anon and the support groups that we have. And then finally we left off yesterday with a couple of questions, Why could they not see that drink meant ruin to them? Why was it, when these dangers were pointed out, that they agreed and then got drunk again immediately? So we are going to answer these questions and continue these thoughts on 108 through 110. These are some of the questions which race through the mind of every woman who's had an alcoholic husband. We hope this book has answered some of them. Perhaps your husband has been living in that strange world of alcoholism where everything is distorted and exaggerated. You can see that he really does love you with his better self. Of course, there is such a thing as incompatibility, but in nearly every instance, the alcoholic only seems to be unloving and inconsiderate. It is usually because he is warped and sickened that he says and does these appalling things. Today, most of our men are better husbands and fathers than ever before. Try not to condemn your alcoholic husband no matter what he says or does. He is just another very sick, unreasonable person. Treat him when you can, as though he had pneumonia. When he angers you, remember that he's very ill. There is an important exception to the foregoing. We realize that some men are thoroughly bad-intentioned, and that no amount of patience will make any difference. An alcoholic of this temperament may be quick to use this chapter as a club over your head. Do not let him get away with it. If you are positive he is one of this type, you may feel you better leave. Is it right to let him ruin your life and the lives of your children? Especially when he has before him a way to stop his drinking and abuse, if he really wants to pay the price. The problem with which you struggle usually falls within one of four categories. 1. Your husband may be only a heavy drinker. His drinking may be constant or it may be heavy only on certain occasions. Perhaps he spends too much money for liquor. It may be slowing him up mentally and physically, but he does not see it. Sometimes he is a source of embarrassment to you and his friends. He's positive he can handle his liquor, that it does him no harm, that drinking is necessary in his business. He would probably be insulted if he were called an alcoholic. The world is full of people like him. Some will moderate or stop altogether, and some will not. Of those who keep on, a good number will become true alcoholics after a while. 2. Your husband is showing lack of control, for he is unable to stay on the water wagon even when he wants to. He often gets entirely out of hand when drinking. He admits this is true, but is positive that he will do better. He's begun to try, with or without your cooperation, various means of moderating or staying dry. Maybe he's beginning to lose his friends. His business may suffer somewhat. He's worried at times and is becoming aware that he cannot drink like other people. He sometimes drinks in the morning and through the day also, to hold his nervousness in check. He is remorseful after serious drinking bouts and tells you that he wants to stop. But when he gets over the spree, he begins to think once more how he can drink moderately next time. We think this person is in danger. These are the earmarks of a real alcoholic. Perhaps he can still tend to business fairly well. He has by no means ruined everything. As we say among ourselves, he wants to stop. 3. This husband has gone much further than husband number 2. Though once like number 2, he became worse. His friends have slipped away. His home is a near wreck and he cannot hold a position. Maybe the doctor has been called in and the weary round of sanitariums and hospitals has begun. He admits he cannot drink like other people, but does not see why. He clings to the notion that he will yet find a way to do so. He may have come to the point where he desperately wants to stop but cannot. His case presents additional questions which we shall try to answer for you. You can be quite hopeful of a situation like this. 4. You may have a husband whom you completely despair. He's been placed in one institution after another. He's violent or appears definitely insane when drunk. Sometimes he drinks on the way home from the hospital. Perhaps he has had delirium tremens. Doctors may shake their heads and advise you to have him committed. Maybe you've already been obliged to put him away. This picture may not be as dark as it looks. Many of our husbands were just as far gone, yet they got well. Let's go back to husband number 1. Oddly enough, he is often difficult to deal with. He enjoys drinking. It stirs his imagination. His friends feel closer over a highball. Perhaps you enjoy drinking with him yourself when he doesn't get too far. You have passed happy evenings together chatting and drinking before your fire. Perhaps you both like parties which would be dull without liquor. We've enjoyed such evenings ourselves. We had a good time. We know all about liquor as a social lubricant. Some, but not all of us, think that it has its advantages when reasonably used. Okay, so we see here a little breakdown of the 4 types of drinkers, and definitely want to come back to this in just a minute. Alright, my friends, in the 12 and 12 we are on tradition number 7. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. So if you recall from yesterday's reading, Bill W. here, he very, very short-staffed, I guess you could say, as he's working in this New York group, and there are letters piling in, and he's asking other people for help, financially or whatever, to address all these letters. And here one of his old buddies comes in, and he's hungover, and Bill gives him $5. But if you noticed a little bit yesterday, it sounds like he's awful prideful. You know, he's criticizing the rest of the group for not giving a lot of money to help this cause. And yet here he is giving this man $5 out of his own income, which was a lot back then. But you kind of just, a little bit, you can sense a little bit of pride in his statement here. So again, we're going to build on that thought on page 163. The meeting that night was at New York's old 24th Street clubhouse. During the intermission, the treasurer gave a timid talk on how broke the club was. That was in the period when you couldn't mix money in AA. But finally, he said it. The landlord would put us out if we didn't pay up. He concluded his remarks by saying, "Now, boys, please go heavier on that hat tonight, will ya?" I heard all this quite plainly, as I was piously trying to convert a newcomer who sat next to me. The hat came in my direction, and I reached into my pocket. Still working on my prospect, I fumbled and came up with a 50-cent piece. Somehow it looked like a very big coin, and hastily I dropped it back and fished out a dime, which clinked thinly as I dropped it into the hat. Hats never got folding money in those days. But then I woke up. I, who had boasted my generosity that morning, was treating my own club worse than the distant alcoholics who'd forgotten to send their foundation their dollars. I realized that my $5 gift to this slippee was an ego-feeding proposition, bad for him and bad for me. There was a place in AA where spirituality and money would mix, and that was in the hat. There's another story about money. One night in 1948, the trustees of the foundation were having their quarterly meeting. The agenda discussion included a very important question. A certain lady had died. When her will was read, it was discovered that she had left Alcoholics Anonymous in trust with Alcoholic Foundation a sum of $10,000. The question was, should AA take the gift? All right, so, going back to what Bill says here, here he was giving so much of his money to this one man who is struggling, which was nice of him, don't get me wrong. But perhaps what could have been better use is giving to the group, and maybe taking the man to the meeting to where the group could introduce him to the 12 steps and maybe get him a copy of the big book if there were easily accessible copies at the printing of this. Because basically, especially in these early days of AA, it could have easily just dissolved. It could have been a fad that went away without the financial support of its members being able to pay the landlord for wherever they're hosting their meetings. In other words, if people didn't contribute, then AA might not exist. And therefore, a lot of people who are in desperate need of help might not have an avenue to get that help. Maybe this is Robology, but I think what Bill W. is trying to say is I put that money in the wrong spot. I could have helped that stranger even more by taking him to AA and helping the home group to survive. But yeah, great stuff there. Great stuff. And it's amazing how here in the year 2024, AA is alive and well and still abiding by these 12 steps and 12 traditions. Somehow with the inmates running the asylum, it works. I thank the God of my understanding that it does. Tremendously. And going back to the big book real fast. I think I said this the first time around, but I am so grateful that the paragraph on 108 exists. That's in this book. There is an important exception to the foregoing. We realize that some men are thoroughly bad-intentioned and that no amount of patience will make any difference. An alcoholic of this temperament may be quick to use this chapter as a club over your head. Don't let him get away with it. Here's the thing, my friends. If you're married to an alcoholic that does not want to change, there is nothing you can really do about it. Besides, take care of yourself and your children. It says right here, if you are positive he is one of this type, you may feel that you better leave. Is it right to let him ruin your life and the lives of your children, especially when he has before him a way to stop his drinking and abuse if he really wants to pay the price? There it is. I mean, if we're willing to pay the price. But some people, it breaks my heart, but some people are just not willing to pay the price. Some people are not willing to do the work. They still think they can control it, or they don't think they have a problem. They've never completely, honestly did their first step. But don't put yourself in a dangerous situation, especially around somebody who's not willing to change. Somebody that's not willing to try something new. There is a solution. It's right here in this book. Thousands of people have had hope thanks to what's in this book and doing the things that are in this book. So I'm grateful that's here. Because when I first read through this, I thought to myself, man, there's going to be some twisted people that'll use this as an excuse to keep on drinking. Oh, you got to be patient with me. I've got an illness. Well, we've also got a solution if we're willing to pay the price. But anyway, I'll get off my little platform there, and I just want to say that I'm so grateful that you're here. As always, I don't speak on behalf of AA, NA, Al-Anon, or any other sect, denomination, or religion. I'm just a friend in recovery. And I believe this podcast is helping me just as much, if not more, than anybody else to be reminded of these things. But thank you so much for joining me today. And if we are given another set of 24 hours, my friends, I look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow.